Today, let's collect Red Sonja. Hello everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our next episode of Let's Collect. Today we're collecting Red Sonja. Red Sonja was created back in 1973 for Marvel Comics as part of their as a character introduced into the Conan the Barbarian book. She was based on a Robert E. Howard's character Red Sonja with a Y. And honestly, ultimately, because she was kind of based on that character, Marvel ended up losing the rights. She's now published by Dynamite. Honestly, Marvel probably, because of the name change and how different the characters actually are, probably could have argued that she was an original character if they wanted to and kept the rights, but they did not. So she's kind of moved on to Dynamite. But today we're going to get into her key comics, her best storylines, and of course, those gorgeous Sonja covers. So, with that further ado, let's get into it. First up on our list is her first appearance, which there's a little controversy about. We'll get into that a little bit in a minute. And it is Conan the Barbarian, number 23. This is considered her first appearance by most people. She appears in multiple panels, on multiple pages. And yet there's a little bit of a 180, 181 Wolverine kind of thing going on here with Conan the Barbarian number 24. Different, depending on where you look. One will say this is her first cameo. Others will say this is her first appearance. Seems to me she talks, she's in multiple pages. It's her first appearance. But anyway, and that generally, but the result of that is the two books are pretty similar in price. So Conan the Barbarian number 23, a raw book of this will cost you $30 to $150 depending on condition. The most recent 9.8 sale is not really relevant. It was all the way back at the beginning of 2018, and it was like for $11.50 basically. But 9.6s have been selling. Really, there's not many 9.8s on the census, so my guess is a 9.8 come up, it will go for a lot more than that. 9.6s go between $400 and $500, and 8.5 can be had for $150. For Conan the Barbarian number 24, which is her second appearance and her first cover, that book goes for basically the same price pretty much across the board. Raws are $30 to $150, kind of depending on condition. A 9.8 of this book, there has been recent sales of this. There's a lot more of those on the census, and they go for $12.50 to $1,500. My guess is 23 would go for that if one came up now. 9.6s go for $300 to $400, so just slightly under the price for number 23. And an 8.5 is going to be $100 to $150, so right in that same range. So those two books go for about the same amount. And there is, like I said, a little bit of 180, 181 thing going on there. But both great books, with 23 being her first appearance and 24 being her first cover, at least in my opinion. Next up on our key comics is Savage Sword of Conan number 1. And this is the first appearance of the chainmail bikini, which became her kind of iconic look. This book, raw, goes for also very similarly $20 to $150, depending on condition. A 9.8 of this is going to cost you around $500. A 9.0 is going to be that slightly over $100 range. Our fourth key comic is Kull and the Barbarians, number 3, and this is kind of her original origin story. Raws of this can go for $5 to $25, and there's basically no slabs on the census. There's a few, but not very many, so there haven't been any relevant sales or anything like that to talk about. Our fifth key comic, as we're rolling right along here, is Marvel Feature, Volume 2, number 1. And this is her first kind of solo title because it's Marvel Features Red Sonja, kind of her first solo story. A raw of this book will go for $5 to $20. 9.8s go for $375 to $400-ish. 9.6s actually go for under $100 though, so there's a pretty big difference between a 9.8 and a 9.6. So that's this was like a 7-issue run of her in Marvel feature that we'll talk about a little more in a minute. But our 6th key comic is actually Red Sonja #1, which is her first true solo title with Marvel. The raw of this book's going to cost you $10 to $20 with 9.8 running in that $150 to $200 range. So quite a bit cheaper than the Marvel feature one, at least in terms of a 9.8, but pretty similar actually in value for a raw copy if you can find a nice one. So moving right. So next up is a comic. We'll see if maybe not all Red Sonja fans know about. It seems to be not a lot of them out there, but fairly hard to find, but not too expensive. And that is Red Sonja Death in Scarlet #1. And this is a one-shot that was published by Cross Plains Comics, kind of in between, during the limbo between Marvel and Dynamite getting the rights. And this is basically a $10 to $20 book. So it's really affordable, but not a ton of them out there, so you kind of have to look for it a little bit. Our 9th key comic for Red Sonja is Red Sonja #0. This is the first Sonja at Dynamite from 2005, and this is basically a cover price book. And finally, our last one is that I'm going to put on here is Red Sonja #1 from the 2013 run. There's not a lot of classic Sonja stories, but this run here is considered one of the better ones. But it also is kind of the start of this story reimagines her in a lot of ways. It gets rid of a lot of the tropes that were kind of tied to the character early on. You could almost say it's like that maybe it's not even the same Sonja because they changed a whole bunch about her, that it's like maybe an ancestor or something people have argued and not the original Sonja. But either way, like this is kind of a reimagining, restart for the character, modernization of the character. That's a very popular run from 2013, so that is why I included it. And depending on which cover you get of this book, it's anywhere from a cover price to a $20 book. So those are the 10 key comics. Now let's move into the storylines. So had a little trouble with this. I haven't read a ton of Sonja over the years. There's one run I've read that I am including. But I also couldn't find a lot of people breaking down great Sonja stories online or really talking about them very much. So I kind of just went with sort of a reading order, sort of the classics, the things that seem like the key ones. Whether or not they're the best, I don't know, but that's where I'm going. And the first is The Adventures of Red Sonja, Volume 1. And this collects that Marvel feature 1 through 7 run that I talked about earlier, that like was her first kind of solo story. And this Volume 1 collects all 7 issues of that run. So definitely something you want to pick up if you're trying to be kind of a completionist or really want to go back to the origins of the character or the beginnings of the character. And I followed that up with our second kind of key comics, our key storylines as being The Adventures of Red Sonja Volume 2, which collects the first 7 issues of that 1977 storyline in her solo series. Our third kind of trade or collection is Red Sonja, She-Devil with the Sword, Omnibus #1. And this collects the first 18 issues of her Dynamite run. So that first from 2005 Dynamite series, it collects the first 18 issues of that. So it would be a good omnibus to get. It's considered this is one of the ones people talked about as being one of the better reads. I have not read it myself, but so that is our third kind of story trade or omnibus to grab. Our fourth one is the complete Gail Simone Red Sonja Omnibus. This collects all of Volume 3 Volume 2 if you're just talking about within Dynamite, or Volume 5 if you're talking about like including the Marvel volumes. From 2013, it's 18, I think it's 18 issues. And this is considered kind of the Red Sonja story based on everything I could find. I read this whole story. I really enjoyed it. It's the only Red Sonja thing I've ever read, and I loved it a lot. But so that is definitely why it's on this list. And finally, Red Sonja, the Falcon Throne. And this trade is kind of the follow-up. This is the 2016 volume, but it's only a 6-issue volume written by Margaret Bennett. And this was also considered a really good storyline. I've heard good things about the Amy Chu storyline that's going on right now, but I didn't include that here. There's been a couple of volumes already since, so those are our key storylines, and now let's move into what everyone's probably been waiting for, those awesome covers. So this was almost impossible. This was kind of like the Vampirella thing. It's just so many of them. Basically, every issue that Dynamite's put out in the last several years has 3, 4, 5 covers. There's just so many different ones. There's so many different collections. So I really kind of tried to focus on artists. I picked like an artist and found my favorite cover from them. So you may vary. There definitely will be covers I've left off here that people will love. Put those in the comments down below so that other people can track them down. So with that, these aren't in any order. They're just kind of in order as I was picking through artists. So first up is Red Sonja Volume 1, number 8. And you're going to be an artist. I really wanted to include an early Red Sonja cover, one of the covers from kind of that first run. I'll be honest, I think number 1 is probably the best cover, but I included number 8 just because this is the first time that she appears kind of on the cover fighting a giant snake. And that has become such a trope with Sonja. It's been on a ton of covers since. It's kind of a repeated theme that you will see in her covers and that kind of stuff. So that's why I included this one, is because this is the first time that she does battle with a giant snake on her cover. Our second one that we're going to talk about is Red Sonja from Volume 1 or 4, depending on how you're thinking about it. And this is number 7, the Adam Hughes B cover. Just love this cover. Her, like, a little bit of a sense of humor to this one. Just a really cool cover. Adam Hughes, you can't really go wrong with Adam Hughes drawing the ladies. And this is only a $10 to $15 cover. Should have mentioned that first one was only like a $5 cover, so nothing too expensive yet. There are a few on here that get pretty expensive. Next up is Queen Sonja, number 23, and this is a Perillo cover. I could have went with Red Sonja number 20, the Perillo cover, or Red Sonja number 4. So yes, I'm cheating and showing some other Perillo covers. Really, I could have filled this list almost with Perillo covers if I wanted to. But this is the one I picked. Number 23, Queen Sonja number 23 is the one I picked. And this is a $20 to $40 cover raw. But just a really gorgeous cover, and my favorite of the Perillos that I saw. I'm sure there's probably some I didn't actually see, but just a gorgeous one that I really like. Our fourth cover is Red Sonja, number 0 from Volume 7. And this is a J. Scott Campbell cover, and this is only a $10 cover. I just really like, there's a couple of covers he did for this run, this Volume 7 run, that are like this kind of pencils, sketch kind of style that I just really thought was kind of a cool change of pace to his art and to a Sony cover, kind of an unfinished. I just really liked it, so that's why I included it here. Definitely my favorite of the Campbell covers related to her. At number 5 on our list is Red Sonja from Volume 5, that Gail Simone run, number 10. And one of the best things really about that Gail Simone run, well, the writing's really good and everything else, but the covers by Jenny Frison to this whole run are fantastic. I could have easily put 3 or 4 in there, and I'm actually going to mention a couple of them in a second, but number 10 is my favorite, and it's kind of a $10 to $20 cover, depending on, because it's a little bit hard to find. But other favorites from this Jenny Frison run include number 1, number 8, and number 12. And there's a couple others that are even, I'm not going to mention, that are also gorgeous. Just really love the way she portrayed Sonja during this run. Our 6th cover is Red Sonja, number 1 from Volume 4, the first Dynamite run. And this is a Michael Turner cover. This is another Sonja and a Snake cover. And just felt like I needed to include this Turner. Probably could argue there's some other artists and covers that I left off that might go ahead of it, but it's Michael Turner. I think it's a gorgeous cover, and it's a $5 to $10 book, so nothing too expensive. Number 7 on our list is Red Sonja, from volume 4, or well, from volume 7, or the 4th Dynamite volume. A little confusion there. Dynamite refers to her volumes by their number, whereas like other places you'll see volume 7 being her overall volume. So just keep that in mind. If you're looking at Dynamite, you got to add 3 to actually get to include the Marvel ones or whatever. And this is the this is number 21, the Derek Chu NYCC exclusive from a couple years ago. And this is one of the more expensive ones. This is basically $100 cover raw, but only like a 200-ish cover for a 9.8. So people are asking a lot for these raw ones. You might be able to track this one down for a deal at this point. Kind of some of the heat on this one has cooled. But asking prices are actually much higher than what I just listed the sale prices are. But that's, maybe you can find a deal on this one. But just a gorgeous Derek Chu cover. And number 8 on our list is Red Sonja, Birth of the She Devil, number 1. And this is a Kendrick, or a Lim cover. I can't remember how to pronounce that guy's first name. I wrote it down wrong here. And this is a Paper Asylum variant. And this is an $80 to $100 cover and a $200 cover and a 9.8. But another gorgeous cover. Now I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to add, we're actually going to go to 12. That was number 8. Number 9 is another Red Sonja Birth of the She Devil variant. And this is the Comic Mint Shannon Mayer variant. This is basically a $20 cover raw or a $60 to $70 for 9.8. And finally, our last, so we included 3 different versions of this Birth of the She Devil number 1. And there's a Jae Hung Lee, Frankie's Comics variant, and there's a bloody and non-bloody version of this. They both go for about the same, $20 to $30 for raw copies. So next up, so that gets us, that would be 9 and 10. Well, we still have 2 more that I'm going to do. There's Red Sonja, number 1 from the first volume at Dynamite, and this is a Linsner cover. And it's basically a cover price book, but I just think it's a little different style, a little more of a fighting Sonja kind of like, angry kind of thing, and just a cover I really liked, so I decided to include it. And finally, another Red Sonja number 1. This is from a more recent run, the Jamie Tyndall variant, and this is a 789 variant, so another store exclusive. And this is like a $20 cover and $100 for a 9.8. So those are the covers. Like I said, I squeezed a whole bunch in there, and there's still a bunch that I didn't get that are really cool and gorgeous Red Sonja covers. Let me know what you think in the comments of what I included and what I didn't. And I want to thank you guys for watching.